28th of December, Part 4 of Mr. Pickwick's Christmas. "Where does the mince pies go, young opium eater?" said Mr. Weller to the fat boy, as he assisted in laying out such articles of consumption as had not been duly arranged on the previous night. The fat boy pointed to the destination of the pies. "Very good," said Sam. "Stick a bit of Christmas in 'em. T'other dish opposite. There, now we look compact and comfortable, as the father said when he cut his little boy's head off, to cure him of squinting." As Mr. Weller made the comparison, he fell back a step or two to give a full effect to it, and survey the preparations with the utmost satisfaction. "Wardle," said Mr. Pickwick, almost as soon as they were all seated, "a glass of wine, in honour of this happy occasion." "I shall be delighted, my boy," said Wardle. "Joe! Oh, damn that boy, he's gone to sleep." "No, I ain't, sir," replied the fat boy, starting up from a remote corner where, like the patron saint of fat boys, the immortal Horner, he had been devouring a Christmas pie, though not with the coolness and deliberation which characterised that young gentleman's proceedings. "Fill Mr. Pickwick's glass." "Yes, sir." The fat boy filled Mr. Pickwick's glass, and then retired behind his master's chair, from whence he watched the play of the knives and forks and the progress of the choice morsels from the dishes to the mouths of the company with a kind of dark and gloomy joy that was most impressive. "God bless you, old fellow," said Mr. Pickwick. "Same to you, my boy," replied Wardle, and they pledged each other heartily. "Mrs. Wardle," said Pickwick, "we old folks must have a glass of wine together in honour of this joyful event." The old lady was in a state of great grandeur just then, for she was sitting at the top of the table in the brocaded gown, with her newly married granddaughter on one side and Mr. Pickwick on the other to do the carving. Mr. Pickwick had not spoken in a very loud tone, but she understood him at once, and drank off a full glass of wine to his long life and happiness, after which the worthy old soul launched forth into a minute and particular account of her own wedding, with a dissertation on the fashion of wearing high-heeled shoes, and some particulars concerning the life and adventures of the beautiful Lady Tollinglower, deceased, at all of which the old lady herself laughed very heartily indeed. And so did the young ladies too, for they were wondering among themselves what on earth Grandma was talking about. When they laughed, the old lady laughed 10 times more heartily, and said that these always had been considered capital stories, which caused them all to laugh again, and put the old lady into the very best of humours. Then the cake was cut, and passed through the ring. The young ladies saved pieces to put under their pillows to dream of their future husbands on, and a great deal of blushing and merriment was thereby occasioned. "Mr. Miller," said Mr. Pickwick to his old acquaintance, the hard-headed gentleman, "a glass of wine?" "With great satisfaction, Mr. Pickwick," replied the hard-headed gentleman solemnly. "You'll take me in?" said the benevolent old clergyman. "And me," interposed his wife. "And me, said a couple of poor relations at the bottom of the table, who had eaten and drunk very heartily, and laughed at everything. Mr. Pickwick expressed his heartfelt delight at every additional suggestion, and his eyes beamed with hilarity and cheerfulness. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Mr. Pickwick, suddenly rising. "Hear, hear, 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 hear," cried Mr. Weller, in the excitement of his feelings. "Call in all the servants," cried old Wardle, interposing to prevent the public rebuke which Mr. Weller would otherwise most indubitably have received from his master. "Give them a glass of wine each to drink the toast in. Now, Pickwick." Amidst the silence of the company, the whispering of the women servants, and the awkward embarrassment of the men, Mr. Pickwick proceeded. "Ladies and gentlemen. No, I won't say ladies and gentlemen. I'll call you my friends, my dear friends, if the ladies will allow me to take so great a liberty." Here Mr. Pickwick was interrupted by immense applause from the ladies, echoed by the gentlemen, during which the owner of the eyes was distinctly heard to state that she could kiss that dear Mr. Pickwick. Whereupon Mr. Winkle gallantly inquired if it couldn't be done by deputy, to which the young lady with the black eyes replied, "Go away," and accompanied the request with a look which said as plainly as a look could do, "If you can." "My dear friends," resumed Mr. Pickwick, I am going to propose the health of the bride and bridegroom. God bless them. Cheers and tears. My young friend Trundle I believe to be a very excellent and manly fellow, and his wife I know to be a very amiable and lovely girl, well qualified to transfer to another sphere of action the happiness which for 20 years she has diffused around her in her father's house. Here the fat boy burst forth into stentorian blubberings, and was led forth by the coat collar by Mr. Weller. I wish, added Mr. Pickwick, I wish I was young enough to be her sister's husband. Cheers. But failing that, I am happy to be old enough to be her father. For being so, I shall not be suspected of any latent designs when I say that I admire, esteem, and love them both. Cheers and sobs. The bride's father, our good friend here there, is a noble person, and I am proud to know him. Great uproar! He is a kind, excellent, independent, spirited, fine-hearted, hospitable, liberal man. Enthusiastic shouts from the poor relations at all the adjectives, especially at the two last. That his daughter may enjoy all the happiness even he can desire, and that he may derive from the contemplation of her felicity all the gratification of heart and peace of mind which he so well deserves, is, I am persuaded, our united wish. So, let us drink their healths, and wish them prolonged life, and every blessing. Mr. Pickwick concluded amidst a whirlwind of applause, and once more were the lungs of the supernumeraries under Mr. Weller's command brought into active and efficient operation. Mr. Wardle proposed Mr. Pickwick. Mr. Pickwick proposed the old lady. Mr. Snodgrass proposed Mr. Wardle. Mr. Wardle proposed Mr. Snodgrass. One of the poor relations proposed Mr. Tupman, and the other poor relation proposed Mr. Winkle. All was happiness and festivity, until the mysterious disappearance of both the poor relations under the table warned the party that it was time to adjourn. At dinner they met again, after a 25-mile walk. Undertaken by the males at Wardle's recommendation to get rid of the effects of the wine at breakfast. Why did you not drink it in the first place? The poor relations had kept in bed all day, with the view of attaining the same happy consummation, but as they had been unsuccessful, they stopped there. Mr. Weller kept the domestics in a state of perpetual hilarity, and the fat boy divided his time into small alternate allotments of eating and sleeping. The dinner was as hearty an affair as the breakfast, and was quite as noisy, without the tears. Then came the dessert, and some more toasts. Then came the tea and coffee, and then the ball. The best sitting room at Manor Farm was a good, long, dark-panelled room with a high chimney-piece and a capacious chimney up which you could have driven one of the new patent cabs, wheels and all. At the upper end of the room, seated in a shady bower of holly and evergreens, were the two best fiddlers, and the only harp in all Muggleton. In all sorts of recesses and on all kinds of brackets stood massive old silver candlesticks with 4 branches on each. The carpet was up, the candles burned bright, the fire blazed and crackled on the hearth, and merry voices and light-hearted laughter rang through the room. If any of the old English yeomen had turned into fairies when they died, it was just the place in which they would have held their revels. We'll find out what happens next tomorrow. Bye for now.